Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our 13th Calgary Adapted Hub powered by Jumpstart Research and Community Engagement Seminar. First and foremost, the Calgary Adapted Hub powered by Jumpstart gratefully acknowledges that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. In the spirit of reconciliation and the responsibility that we all hold in the sport and recreation sector, I encourage everyone watching this today to regularly review and revisit the Truth and Reconciliation Act's calls to actions number 87 to 91, which directly apply to our sector. For those that attended our seminar live, we shared the link with them to review those calls to action. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that we're creating inclusive spaces and environments where everyone feels welcomed and belonged. And we certainly hope that this virtual space offers that for you all today. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker for today's seminar, presenting her talk, A Blueprint for Building Quality Participation in Sport for Children, Youth, and Adults with a Disability. Dr. Amy Latimer-Cheung is a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies at Queen's University. Her research aims to encourage people to move more. Amy is particularly interested in increasing sport and exercise participation among people with disability by creating positive, active experiences. Passionate about translating her research into practice, she has contributed to the development of more than 30 practical resources and tools, such as the Quality Participation Blueprint for Children, Youth, and Adults with a Disability. A direct translation of her research into practice, Amy is the executive co-director of the Kingston Revved-Up, an adapted exercise program for 200 people with a disability. Amy is a dedicated undergraduate instructor and a graduate student mentor. I personally have been very fortunate to get to know Amy over the past year and a half and benefit from her leadership and mentorship through connecting through the National Parasport Collective and her work with the Canadian Disability Participation Project. We are so grateful that Amy gave us her time and expertise to share with us, and we really hope you enjoy her talk. Turn it over to Amy.
I must say that my admiration is very much mutual and reciprocated. I've had now the opportunity to be involved in a few of the Calgary Adapted Hub projects, and the work and the energy that is coming from your work is just exemplary. So for those of you who are involved in that or need resources, certainly an excellent spot to stop. Before we begin today, I too would like to acknowledge where I live, work, and play. Today I join you from Ottawa, which is an unceded territory of the Anishinaabe or Algonquin people. And we're regularly reminded of the need to respect our lands. This weekend we had a thunderstorm like we've never had before, and it was a stark reminder of how precious the trees and our environment is. So it is always an opportunity to reflect and think about ways that we can be mindful of the special spaces in which we live. Now, today, this may be your opportunity to accidentally hit the leave button really quickly, or to stay. We will have a few opportunities to engage with each other. Originally, Letitia had reached out and said, we've been hearing from our teams that they'd really like a panel, which is a great idea. However, that required me responding quickly and in an organized fashion, and that didn't happen. So, but I have good news is that I think we have extensive expertise on the call here today that you will serve as the panel. So just beware, there will be opportunities for you to engage in different activities. We will be using Jamboard, which is a whiteboard, which I imagine many of you are familiar with, but some of you may not. I'm going to post a link in the chat. And I'd like you to click on it, and then I'll give you an orientation to Jamboard, and then I'll give you a few minutes to respond to a particular question that I've posed. If you need any type of support to access that, please directly message Karen or Letitia, and they can pop you into a breakout room with them to help you support the use of that tool. Or you can just sit back and enjoy and see how others engage with that as well. So on Jamboard, it is a fairly straightforward tool to use. If you need to zoom in or out, there is on the top corner, there's a magnifying glass that you can click on to zoom in or out so that you can see what's being written a bit more clearly. If you'd like to do some freestyle drawing or writing, you can use the pen. We'll be largely using the Post-it note. So you will simply click on the sticky note, type what you want, and it will, and then you click save. So hello.
Sorry, Amy, I'm just going to interrupt you here for a second. Can you update the share settings? I think folks are getting a request for access message.
I thought I did, and that always happens to me. Oh, there we go. There we go. Everybody should be able to draw beautiful pictures on it now. So we'll just recap. So you should be able to, I should start seeing random animals, I think, popping up. There we go. Yep, you're coming in. Wonderful. Okay, so now that you have access, again, just a quick recap. If you, to engage with the whiteboard, you have tools on the left. We'll be using the sticky note largely for this particular Jamboard. And you simply, and then you can click on your sticky note and place it wherever you'd like. All right. There we go. Some people's already in. So in a few words, I'd like you to describe a meaningful sport experience that you have had, whether it be as a coach, as an athlete, as a parent, as a spectator. So take a moment or two to add that. These are all awesome. Okay, take maybe one more minute to add something if you'd like. If you're having trouble with the Jamboard, you're welcome to type your comment in the chat, and maybe Karen or Letitia, if you could add those additional post-its. Right? Great. Great. I'm going to now ask you to minimize that, and we're going to switch gears. I'm going to give you a little bit of information, and then we're going to revisit that Jamboard a few times. There we go. So now I've shared on my screen some slides. As a researcher, we could never present without PowerPoint. That would just leave us hanging. So I do have some slides to share and some ideas to share with you. You're welcome to ask questions at any time or save them for the end, whatever you would like best. As Karen mentioned, I work alongside a team of outstanding people with the Canadian Disability Participation Project. And I think some of you may have had the opportunity to hear my colleague Kathleen Martin-Guinness speak, or Kelly Arbor-Nikotopoulos. And we all work collectively towards the goal of promoting quality community participation among Canadians with physical disabilities, where we started with the CDPP, or Canadian Disability Participation Project. However, our stakeholders and our communities have challenged us to broaden that focus. So really, we do focus on promoting participation among people living in Canada with disabilities. For our presentation or our talk today, I have two objectives. So one is to provide you with information that allows you or develops your understanding of the basics of quality participation, where it came from, what it is, why it's important, and then to help you understand how you can create a quality participation blueprint for your organization. So originally, when we started our work, it was Kathleen Martin-Guinness and I from UBC, started working together about 22 years ago, looking at the benefits of physical activity for persons with spinal cord injury is where we started. And we were really interested in simply increasing the amount of participation or physical activity persons with spinal cord injury were doing on a daily basis. That was where we started. And then we were trying to increase the motivation to engage in physical activity. Really what our research was focused on was the quantity of participation. How could we increase the amount and the numbers of people with spinal cord injury initially, but again, more broadly, how people with physical disabilities could engage in more physical activity. Because we knew that that the levels of participation among persons with disability are significantly lower than the levels of the general population. We found a number of strategies to promote and create opportunity for persons with disability to participate, but we also I had the chance to identify the over 300 barriers that persons with disability face when trying to engage in physical activity. We continue to work in this sphere to try to come up with strategies to support organizations as well as individuals with disability to increase the amount of activity they do. However, one of the areas that our work has directed us is to also broaden our conceptualization of participation to include that notion of quality participation. If we are successful in increasing the amount of time or access a person with disability has to programming, we also need to consider the experience they have once they're there. We all too often hear about the fourth grader who goes to gym class and isn't able to participate in physical education. They're the scorekeeper, or they're asked to have a seat while the other students engage in a particular activity. We need to really think about when we do have opportunity for individuals, adults, children, to engage in physical activity, that to ensure that their experience is positive. And this has broadened our conceptualization of participation to the idea that our research aims to promote full and effective participation. And this idea of full and effective participation actually is reflected in the United Nations Convention of Rights for Persons with Disability. And in fact, there is a right that a person with disability has to full and effective participation in a variety of life domains, including sport and recreation. And so our research has really, for the past 7 years, has really been focused on this dual aspect of promoting quantity as well as quality participation. One of the challenges in conducting this initial work was that we actually didn't really know what quality participation meant and how it was defined by persons with disability. So that was our original work in this particular area. Specifically, we were interested in understanding how to create quality participation among persons with disability. So I worked with a colleague, Dr. Blair Evans, who's now at Western University, who some of you may have had the opportunity to work with him in his cross-country ski world, for example. Is a very, very deep thinker, and it's a pleasure to work with somebody who's so intelligent. But when Blair does something, he does it very thoroughly. So he led us through a very thorough process, developed this framework of quality participation. It was a multi-phase process. So we began by conducting a series of reviews of the literature and also conducting some original research of our own. We spoke to athletes, we spoke to coaches, we spoke to parents, and we also looked at what other literature was available. And we identified a number of gaps in that literature. From that, the literature that was available, we started developing a series of principles or ideas of what quality participation could be. Then from our process continued, we had the opportunity to speak with persons with lived experience with disability. Again, had coaches, athletes, parents, all review these ideas. And we went back and forth a number of times with these stakeholder groups, and finally ended up on this document, which, I'm going to say the thing that somebody should never say in a presentation is, I don't expect you to be able to read this. And I actually put this up purposefully. This is what we created, this very dense, very uninteresting and unappealing document that is really typical of what we often create in research that really isn't very useful to somebody who actually a practitioner who might be interested in actually enhancing the quality of participation. So what we did, we worked with Blair as well as our researchers and community partners to take this information and create it in a way that is hopefully more useful to practitioners. And specifically, this work led to the creation of the Quality Participation Blueprint. Originally, we started with a blueprint for children, youth, and adults with disability broadly. We have since created specific versions of this for children and youth with autism spectrum disorder, as well as in collaboration with Special Olympics Canada. One thing we pride ourselves on is that this work is wholly founded on evidence-based principles. So our blueprint is accompanied by an evidence-based resource that links the practical recommendations with the research as well. Let me tell you about what's included in this, this blueprint and where we landed in terms of what quality participation is. Specifically, we describe or define quality participation as being achieved when athletes with a disability view their involvement in sport as satisfying and enjoyable, and when they experience outcomes that they consider important. So some aspects of this particular definition to highlight and that I think align quite nicely with the sports sector and priorities in the sports sector, it really suggests that we need to strive to create experiences that are athlete-centered, again, that create outcomes that are important to the athlete. So once we have this definition of quality participation, we then kind of took another step back or forwards, whichever you might consider, to think about, okay, so we know what quality participation is, how do we create it? So our next series of steps in the research process were understanding some of the kind of concepts that may contribute to quality participation. And where we landed was the idea that quality participation is a long-term experience. It's what happens over the course of a season, the course of an athletic career, for example. And it's created through a series of repeated and sustained quality experiences. And that is every interaction the athlete has with their sport. And so we describe a quality experience as a feeling state. So it's an acute, in the moment experience involving satisfaction and enjoyment based on whether an athlete appraises or perceives or experiences parasport as being satisfying one or more of their needs or values. And specifically, we found that athletes' needs and values really fell into 6 categories, which we call building blocks. And these building blocks include autonomy, which is the idea of having independence, choice, and control. Belongingness, feeling included, accepted, respected, and being part of a group. Challenge, feeling appropriately tested. Engagement, being in the moment, focused or absorbed. Mastery, feeling a sense of achievement. And meaning, contributing to a personally or socially meaningful goal, feeling a sense of responsibility to others. We found this repeatedly through speaking to athletes that are both involved in recreation programs as well as high performance athletes. We also find it across different segments of the population of persons with lived experience of disability, as well as children all the way up to adults as well. Now let's take a moment to see if these ideas kind of might resonate with some of the experiences you had. So I'm going to take a moment, and I'm going to flip back to the Jamboard here. You should be able to see my screen, and let's see what some of the ideas that you talked about. So here, there's this. I started off with this one: traveling with my team to a competition, having the feeling of belongingness. I got injured during a competition. My friend competed for me, won gold, and gave me the medal. That's an amazing experience. That would probably also be belonging, feeling like you belonged or were part of a group. Connection with community. Not very athletic, crossing the finish line for my first half marathon at age 55 plus. Amazing. That would fall under 2, challenge and mastery. Coaching minor hockey. That interesting. There's when we're involved as coaches or volunteers, a lot of it has to do with the idea of meaning, perhaps being part of contributing to a socially responsible or meaningful experience, providing children with disabilities opportunity to experience physical activity and sport in their own way, for example, was another one that we could kind of cluster over here. Coaching a team of engaged and motivated athletes. We'll move that one down here, and we can see what, maybe if somebody wants to later share what it is that made you feel that way. Perhaps it was this one, teaching my sister how to ski, perhaps as your coach or as the mentor. In that case, it might have been the feeling of challenge or mastery that you were experiencing succeeding, or so it might have gone kind of maybe around this idea of challenge and mastery, or perhaps it went over here with meaning, contributing to a meaningful goal. Watching Team Alberta, this basketball team, win gold at the Canada Games in front of a record-breaking crowd. That one might be engagement. I'll put it on its own over here. And I'm just trying to cluster a few of these over in areas where we might see that there's some common themes. Competing with a team. So we've got lots of here. Volunteering on a sport board. Watching, this one was meeting. Assisting a client with a goal, make it to bocce national team. So again, interesting that we kind of have things clustering in 2 main areas with a few additional ones over here. But generally, we're seeing from your experiences that there are 2 building blocks that really resonate. We're seeing that this feeling of belonging, being part of a team, is really meaningful. And for many of you who are volunteers or coaches or mentors, perhaps contributing to a socially meaningful goal or having a sense of responsibility. So the building block of meaning is really resonating. So those are 2 areas that are important to you specifically. We're now going to shift gears and start thinking about maybe some of the programs you offer and how these building blocks might apply in that respect. So here we go. Some key considerations when we think about creating quality experience and using those building blocks to create a positive experience every time your athlete arrives at the gym or on the field or on the playing surface is that you should take into consideration. So one is that these building blocks need to be repeated and sustained over time. So it's not simply, as you well know, one really positive experience is going to reign and simply be all the athlete experiences, but every time an athlete engages with sport, we need to strive to provide quality experience. Also, we need to be mindful that the aspects or the importance of each experiential element or building block depends on the person and the context. So you well know, I'm sure you can think of an athlete who really, regardless of their level of play, whether it be from recreation to high performance, they're really there for the team and the people. But you can probably also think of an athlete who is there to win and is there to master and be the best at their sport. So recognizing that there are these individuals who have different reasons for being and for playing or engaging in sport is really important so that you can create an experience that is satisfying and enjoyable for them. Also, from our opportunity to engage with athletes, there's a suggestion that building blocks are dynamic and fluid, and they are subject to change over time. We've done some work where we're starting to see that athletes, particularly beginning, generally are attracted to sport largely for the aspect of belonging. They want to be part of the team. That's the building block that's a priority. As their experience changes and as they move along the pathway, the building blocks they want to experience change. Perhaps they're now engaging in sport because it's who they are and how they identify. They're an athlete. And if that's the case, the element of meaning is really important. Or perhaps they want to engage in high performance sport. In that case, elements of mastery and challenge may be more important. But that might change over the course of the career, and it might change from day to day. So that's really important to be mindful of. If you continually design practices and programs that foster only belonging, then there will be a segment of your athlete population for whom the experience will no longer be meeting their values and needs. And also to be mindful, while we have, the ideal would be that you would individually tailor every experience you create to every athlete you have in your group. We do have to be realistic and realize that that is very challenging. It can be done, but if you had to, you may opt to select or focus on particular building blocks that maybe are particularly important to a larger segment of your athlete group, or perhaps that you haven't focused on before, because we often get feedback of, well, all the building blocks seem important. Why would I prioritize them? It is difficult to do all 6 all the time. Perhaps prioritizing one, meeting that need, and ingraining some of those particular approaches into your program, and then moving on to another might be an approach if you don't have the resources or don't have the ability to tailor things as specifically as you might like. Some of the considerations for why you might use this particular approach, some strengths. So it's solidly based in research evidence. While the work of Blair Evans was our foundational work, we've continued to work with this framework over the past 7 years, and seeing that the concepts and the ideas resonate, as even you saw today, that those 2 building blocks were really quite prominent without any real prompting. Also, the aspect that we're particularly proud of is that this framework was developed with the disability community. Often, many of our sport partners take frameworks that are used for the able-bodied population or athletes, and then try to kind of retrofit them for athletes with a disability. And in this case, we've done the opposite. We've created a framework for athletes with a disability, and we do think that it actually applies quite nicely to athletes without a disability. We think that it complements existing frameworks, and I'll highlight that in a moment and what I mean. All our resources are available at no cost. They were created through a federal research grant. They're available on our website, and we continue to develop resources. We have a series of evaluation metrics I'll highlight for you, so that if you're interested in evaluating whether your program is meeting your athletes' needs, there's a questionnaire that you can use. And this is a commitment that we're solidly aiming to continue to move forward. So it will continue to evolve and further reflect the needs of athletes, coaches, and parents with a disability. So we hope that there'll be ongoing evaluation. It's not kind of the flavor of the day, and then we're going to move on. As I mentioned, in terms of resources, we have posted on our website our quality participation blueprint for athletes or participants with autism spectrum disorder, as well as for children and youth with intellectual disability. We're working closely with Special Olympics to develop an online tool as well, and that's almost ready. We're just finishing off the French version, so hopefully we'll have that set for September. As I mentioned as well, we do have this tool called the MEEP, or Measure of Experiential Aspects of Participation. It's available too on our website. And this is a questionnaire that you could use with your athletes, or you might use it with a proxy, with a parent of a child, to get some information about what's important to them, or what type of experience you're creating. And it would be quite interesting if you think you're creating an experience that's really focused on autonomy, for example, and then you ask your athletes, do you feel that you have make your own choices? And they're saying, no, not at all. That might be a flag of, uh-oh, there's some discrepancy between what we think we're doing, what the athletes are perceiving, and perhaps we might want to align our efforts with what they want and need. And our evolving research is demonstrating the importance of quality participation. Specifically, the way we're beginning to view that concept of quality participation and how it fits with some of the other kind of key topics that we're seeing emerge in the sport realm is that we really see quality participation in these 6 building blocks as a toolkit for how you can create positive experiences in sport, and specifically how you can create safe sport, how you can promote physical literacy or create physical literacy, and promote quality of life. Specifically, we've done a recent survey of 400 Canadian adults, and I know many of you are likely focusing your programs on children and youth, but among adults who are participating in sport, from recreational sport to high performance sport. So there's a range of participation. And we found that individuals who experienced higher levels of quality participation also reported feeling safer in sport. Now, what's really exciting about this is that it provides us with a set of tools for how we can create safe sport. We often think of safe sport as kind of the absence of maltreatment, but we've conducted a series of interviews with 5 athletes, high performance athletes, their coaches, as well as administrators. And we're realizing that that definition is really limiting. And we need to reach beyond simply the absence of maltreatment to actually create an experience that's positive and enjoyable or quality. And so when we find that we create an experience that, for example, offers athletes choice or lets athletes feel that they are respected as athletes and that provides them a sense of meaning, this also creates a feeling of safety within sport. So it gives us very specific and concrete ways to achieve this particular outcome. Similarly with physical literacy, which we realize is a real area of focus for many organizations, the 6 building blocks are ways of fostering, for example, that aspect of motivation that's part of physical literacy. We find that people who have quality experience in sport have stronger intentions or motivation to continue sport, and also have greater experiences of confidence and competence to engage in sport. So again, you have these kind of 6 general themes or areas that you can focus on to create that physical literacy experience. And perhaps as a data nerd, I'm not sure, but we're also somebody who's kind of takes sport from a public health perspective. I think a really interesting finding is that what we're seeing is that enhancing the quality of experience is a stronger predictor of athletes' quality of life than the actual amount of sport they're performing. So quality is becoming seemingly more important than quantity of participation. So if we can create, it might not necessarily be about creating tons and tons of opportunities for people to participate, but rather ensuring that the opportunities that are provided are really high quality will be really important for enhancing the quality of life and overall mental health of individuals with disability. Before I move on to my second objective, I'm happy to take questions. That was a lot of information about what is quality participation. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like me to clarify? Good. Great. Okay. So of course, the next question is, well, this is wonderful that we know that we need to promote quality participation. How do we go about doing it? So here's kind of a series of 5 steps that you can take within your organization to promote or create quality participation. And these 5 steps are also outlined in a 1-page fact sheet available on our website. And I'll share that with Karen and Letitia, and they can circulate that out to you. But these 5 steps include identifying the building blocks that are most important for participants, determining what you're currently doing to support these building blocks, determining what you need to start doing, determining what you need to stop or change doing to support these building blocks. And then, oops, sorry, my numbers got all mixed up there. And then reflecting on how well you're working towards achieving those building blocks and updating or revising your blueprint regularly. So we have a few minutes left. We have about 20 minutes left. What I'd like to do is spend some time giving you some tips or strategies of how you might undertake each of these steps within your organization. So identifying the most important building blocks for participants. There are a few ways that you can do this. So this is where you get to kind of interact a little bit. One way that you can go about doing this we'll use our Jamboard again. Let me just, before you flip to it, I'll flip to mine and show you what the task will be. So I've created a series of Jamboards. To move to the next one, you'll click the button up top here, move to the next frame. And I've duplicated this particular slide a number of times. We're going to go into breakout rooms, and when you're in a breakout room, you have a group number, and you'll find, so if you're in group 1, you'll use the group 1 form. If you're in group 2, you'll move ahead and use the group 2 form. All right, and what I'd like you to do, and you're going to do this, with your group and have a discussion, is I'd like you to try to arrange the building blocks from highest to lower priority, recognizing that I realize you might feel that all the building blocks are important in your program or in your particular approach. Which one do you think is most important? And you might want to have a discussion about what particular type of program you're offering or thinking about, because there may be some variation from your own experiences. So I'd like you to try that as a group to arrange your building blocks from highest to lower priority. All right. Any questions about the mechanisms at all, or the instructions at all of what to do? You've got it. And if you're not feeling the love for the Jamboard, I'm hoping that one person at least in your group will get it. All right. So Karen and Letitia, if you wouldn't mind, I think we have about 25 people still.
Just popped up, so we're at 20.
20. Okay, perfect. If you wouldn't mind breaking into maybe three groups, that would be great. Maybe four random groups. That would be okay.
Okay, here we go.
Great.
You can just let me know if you're having trouble get to your room. I think Letitia, you should be able to join the room. Does it pop up for you?
Looks like I can join any room. Just move around as I see fit.
Letitia, if it'd be possible to bring people back in about a minute, that would be great if you want to give them that heads up. Yeah.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm super late.
Oh, no problem. This is great.
Uh,
We're just in breakout room. They're just joining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm so late. I'll catch the rest of the recording tonight or when it's posted. We're getting a new electronic medical record on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, that's a rough one.
45 minutes late. I feel like I'm doing well today.
Excellent. Great. The group I was with, they're still chatting, maybe. Is everybody back or?
No, there's still a few people in rooms, but it will officially close in 20 seconds.
Okay, great.
I didn't realize it had a 1-minute countdown timer on it.
Yes, yes.
Handy feature.
Okay, there we go. And everybody's back. Good. Okay, excellent. Great. All right. Thank you for having those discussions. Let's take a moment to look through the arrangement because I think there's some pretty interesting observations. So I'm going to just flip through. I'm now back on the Jamboard to show that, but and I'm sharing my screen, but you can also flip through yourself. So group one had belonging, meaning autonomy, challenge, engagement, mastery was their arrangement. Great. And group three had autonomy, engagement, meaning belonging, challenge, mastery. So my memory is not good enough to remember everything that was there, but interesting that even the first building block varied and engagement was autonomy, engagement were high. The third group, different, still discussing, which is great, had belonging, autonomy, mastery, meaning challenge, engagement. So this time, engagement was near the bottom, autonomy still relatively high, and belonging was the lead. And then the fifth group had belonging, autonomy, engagement, meaning mastery, and challenge as their arrangements. So again, belonging and autonomy generally were high. So some kind of general themes that we saw. A few groups seemed to prioritize belonging. Autonomy seemed to be kind of in the top three. Engagement seemed to be among the top as well, which is really interesting. Now, this is an activity, or this type of discussion is a really good one to have amongst your coaching staff and administration to determine what you want your programs to achieve, but also critical is to involve the athletes that have participated in the past or will be participating, as well as possibly their parent or proxy, to get a sense of what they're hoping to achieve. Because if you are really striving to create belonging, but that's not at all what the athletes want, you're not going to create that quality experience. You may be successful in fostering belonging, but quality experience is when the athlete's needs and priorities are met. So understanding what the athlete is looking to achieve is really critical. And then trying to align with what you're hoping to achieve and what they're hoping to achieve. Because there are instances certainly when kind of like Steve Jobs is people don't know what they want until it's in their hand, was his approach. So there may be instances where athletes might not realize the importance of belonging, for example, when they want to be on a gold medal podium, but also respecting that they have a say and have particular priorities is really important. Now, just for your interest, another way that we've done this particular activity is actually having people complete this meet or measure of experiential aspects of participation, asking them, when I participate in this program, I want to do what's desirable for me. I want to have these particular experiences. So it's a bit more, less kind of the overall building block that they arrange, but rather kind of a bit more abstract, and it comes together. And we've done it with a number of different groups of sport administrators, and these are their results. So the questions are on a scale from 1 to 7, 1 being strongly disagree to 7 strongly agree. And the question is, I want when an individual participates in my program, I want them to experience. And the building block that routinely comes out, so here are 4 different groups that have done it. Belonging generally.
Sorry, I think we're still on the.
Oh, shoot. Yes, thank you for telling me that. I usually share. Yeah. I've had times where people are too polite to tell me that that's the case, and I do a whole presentation that way. There we go. Nope. Here we go. So here's a set of graphs that show how sport administrators largely prioritize the different building blocks. Some of it has to do with particularly engagement, the wording of the items, but the general pattern is quite interesting. We generally see if you look across all the graphs, that the concept of belonging comes out as kind of the highest priority that sport practitioners would like to achieve in their programs. Again, and this has been through high performance sport all the way to kind of rec level, active start type programming. Engagement generally tends to be lower for a variety of reasons. Some of it's the way we've worded the question, but also for some athletes with disability, kind of achieving engagement isn't necessarily possible. Some kids with intellectual disability, for example, might have difficulty becoming absorbed in an activity and might need to move from activity to activity. And that's completely fine. And so that might not be a particular building block that you really focus on to get them really absorbed in an activity, but rather create opportunity for challenge and mastering a particular approach. So these are 2 different ways that you might achieve that first step of creating a quality participation blueprint. The next step in creating a quality participation blueprint is coming up with specific strategies to target each of the building blocks. And the way that I like to have groups do this is to undertake a brainstorming activity. And so, and I'll share, you can, for example, what you might do, I like doing it in a group, in a room with Post-it notes, but you could do something like this. So I'm looking at slide 12 on the Jamboard, but you could do something like this if you had to do it virtually, where you put the building block up and then you ask people in your group to brainstorm strategies they use to foster autonomy, for example. And that might be giving athletes a choice. So we talked about this, about the color of a ball they use when they're playing a particular sport, or giving athletes a choice about whether they want to do start with flexibility or start with strength. could be some different examples of the way you may include a choice in your particular program. And those are just kind of some very simple examples, but having a discussion about ways people do this. And it's sad that Jamie had to leave. We've done some from Rocky Mountain Adaptive. His group used the quality participation blueprint and has done like some amazing things. For example, to create belonging, they trained the ski lift operators to really support their athletes getting up the ski lift. And wow, imagine just feeling welcome from the moment that you kind of approach the ski hill all the way to the experience of actually skiing. So some really thoughtful and creative ways that people use to foster each of these building blocks. So that would be the first step in the process, is just brainstorm any idea you have for creating this particular building block, and do that for each of the building blocks. So autonomy, belonging. And then once you do that, what you want to do next is think about, look at the strategies you're already doing and give yourselves a thumbs up. Then identify the strategies from that brainstorming that you want to start doing. And then also look at think about any of the activities that you're doing currently that maybe aren't on that list and might be a sign that maybe you should stop doing them. Or maybe they can be tweaked a little bit to ensure that they are fostering a particular building block. So for example, maybe you give out team uniforms, but don't make a big deal about it. And you could tweak it a little bit and use that as kind of an opportunity to really foster belonging. Maybe there's a special day that you give out the uniforms, and that's a really celebrated element of your program. And there's a way to kind of foster belonging and actually even meaning that, wow, you are an athlete, would be a way that you can just tweak something you're already doing to make it even more effective in fostering that building block. So it doesn't need to be something big, it can be a small change. From that, kind of take all the soup and ideas that you've got. So your most important building blocks, the strategies you want to start doing, and things that you want to change. And you'll probably have lots and lots and lots of ideas. And I encourage you to pick maybe 2 and prioritize those. Then take action. And I'd love to hear stories, if you try any of this, stories about what you've done. Perhaps post your action plan. If you have a coach's room or a clubhouse for you to see, for your athletes to see. People have talked about creating lanyards that remind them of the building blocks, for example, or maybe what your focus is this week. And then once you've done that, solicit feedback. Ask your athletes, hey, how was that today? And they're like, that was awesome. I loved having this opportunity to learn from my peer. And that was your goal for today. You know, you were successful. And talk about the specific building blocks to know whether you're achieving them. And then in regular staff meetings, have the opportunity to reconfigure your blueprint to ensure that you're meeting the needs of your athletes. And with that, we actually have developed a specific workshop where it's about an hour and a half, it can be done virtually, where we work with you to kind of come up with and walk through those steps. And we'd be happy to, it's again, available at no cost. And we would be happy to support your organization in facilitating that workshop. If you're interested, please feel free to reach out. So thank you very much. And I realize it's dinner time for many of you, so I'll wrap up there.
Amazing. Thanks, Amy. We will open it up for questions and comments. And I know we are at the end of our time limit here. But if anyone did have any specific comments or questions they'd like to share, we can keep this open for a few more minutes.
Dinner's calling.
Yeah, Amy, that was really wonderful. I had jotted down a few questions to ask in this Q&A part in the earlier part of your presentation, and then your second half, you drove that all home with here's the actual steps, and here's the practices of how you remedy that when there is a discrepancy between what your intention was and what the actual athlete perception is, and here's some great cues and steps. So yeah, just what a fantastic resource.
Thanks.
Yeah, very well done.
Excellent. Great. Well, again, if anybody has any questions or would like to continue would like to do kind of more of a tailored workshop, please reach out and we'd be happy to support you doing that. And Tanya, I see you're hoping to get a document again in the chat. I think there were two shared. There was the Jamboard, and then also I think Karen, you shared the Truth and Reconciliation document. So maybe we can follow up and send those along to you. Great.
I'm just putting in the link there, Tanya, to the CDPP resource page where these building block resources are housed, if that's what you were looking for.
Excellent. Yes. Great. All right.
Actually, Amy, sorry, I have a
question.
Sure.
Maybe
Jess, do you want to go ahead and then?
Thank you for the presentation.
Okay, yeah.
I really enjoy it. My question is, if we can use this method also for adults, or you just design it for the children only?
No, you certainly could use it for adults. So the research that we conducted to inform the building blocks was with adults, as well as supplemented with work with children. And then when we repeated the process with Special Olympics, it was all children. So the building blocks resonate with both groups. And we've used this particular approach in physical activity in our Revved-Up exercise program, actually, with adults, and it works beautifully.
Do you think that the priorities of the factors should be different between adults and children?
I think so. The overall, the 6 building blocks resonate with children in particular. The idea of belonging really is strong, and then meaning tends to be less prominent among children. But again, a lot of those reports are you use proxies, so you use parents or caregivers, and so that may differ if you speak to children. We're working on that. So, but the best way to find out is to ask your athletes about what's important to them.
Perfect. That makes sense. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No problem. And Jess, I think you had a question.
Yes, sorry if there's any background noise. I'm actually just about to jump on and coach. And it's, which is fantastic, but I was gonna ask something along the lines of the adults and more so seniors. One of the things I do find is that with seniors, there's still that like hesitation of doing physical activity and participating. So I'm actually with the Ability Center, and I'm part of the Mixed Ability Sport Canada model. Yeah. So one of the things I'm trying to do is help all of the sport clubs who have already gone through the mixed ability model. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a model where you just take mainstream sport and you just make it inclusive for everybody, whether you have a disability or non-disability, everyone's playing together. And if someone needs a variation, then the variation is there, but the actual sport itself hasn't changed. So that's how it differs from adapted or para. But yeah, one of the things I'm finding a little bit of trouble with is recruitment, especially when it comes to obviously some older individuals with disabilities, or just even seniors, because of that, again, preconception that, well, people are going to get hurt. So how would you, like, even if we're developing this membership and belonging and autonomy, how do we get them to actually just even start? I wasn't sure if there was any anything in the research, and apologies if I missed it. My skaters are very loud.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So that's almost kind of switching like to our quantity of participation hat of how do we motivate people to participate. So confidence is such a strong predictor of whether somebody is willing to even be motivated. People can derive confidence from seeing like others. So if you're promoting your mixed ability sport programs, for example, and we do this far too often in parasport of like putting these amazing athletes who deserve lots of attention, but using them as our only role model is problematic. So be mindful of, every opportunity you use to promote your programs have diverse audiences. So if you're looking to recruit older adults, then have materials with older adults, have an older adult out as your spokesperson promoting the programming. So ensure that they can see themselves in the programs, and that's a way to simply build confidence as well, would be probably a strategy that I would recommend.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's great.
Okay. Great.
All right.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Amy.
All
Okay.
right.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Amy.
Bye.
Thank you
Thanks
very
again.
much.
Bye.